Rachel, put your hands where I can see them.
Okay, what is
the credit card
right now?
skimmer in your pants pocket. You've been swiping every customer card into it all night.
Rachael Elizabeth Tyler started this shift like any other. She won't finish it the same way.
I was just doing my job. I was running cards.
We have you on camera swiping every card into your pocket before you ran it.
The first day back on the job, that was all it took. 3 hours into her first shift at the Twin Peaks on Southwest 3rd Street in Oklahoma City, a manager watching the security feed in the back office saw a server moving credit cards in a way that did not match the steps every other server on the floor was using. Within 90 minutes, Oklahoma City police would walk Rachael Elizabeth Tyler out of that restaurant in handcuffs. In her pocket, a USB credit card skimming device. In Tulsa County, an open felony warrant already waiting with her name on it. And inside the Twin Peaks corporate office, an audit of her previous tenure at the same restaurant was about to begin. Before we go any further, I want to know something. When you hand a card to a server at a restaurant, do you actually watch where it goes, or do you just trust it? Tell me in the comments. And if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We cover these accountability cases every single week, and we do not let them get buried. Rachael Elizabeth Tyler was born in Oklahoma City in the spring of 1984. Her mother worked the early shift at a nursing home off North Lincoln Boulevard, ironing scrubs in the dark before sunrise, and clocking in at 6 a.m. for 12-hour rotations that left her exhausted by Friday evening. Her father drove a delivery route for a beverage distributor, the kind of job where you knew every gas station and corner store from Edmond down to Norman and back. There was a brother 2 years older and a sister 4 years younger, and the house they grew up in sat on a block of small ranch homes east of May Avenue, where every front yard had a chain-link fence and every backyard had a barbecue grill bolted to a slab of concrete. By the accounts neighbors would later give to local reporters, Rachael was the middle child who tried hardest. She was the one who made breakfast for her sister on school mornings when their mother had already left for the nursing home. She was the one who ran the lawnmower in July heat without being asked. Teachers at the elementary school remembered her as quiet and observant. Not the loudest student in the room, not the one raising her hand, but the one who turned in every assignment on time with her name written carefully in the upper right corner. Her 4th grade teacher wrote on a progress report that Rachael was an attentive student who watched everything and missed nothing. Years later, that line would feel different. The trouble started small. In the 8th grade, she was caught taking lunch money from another girl's locker. The school called her mother in for a conference. There were apologies, restitution, a week of in-school suspension. Her mother cried in the principal's office. Rachael did not. She sat in the chair with her hands folded in her lap and answered every question with a one-word response. The school counselor noted that she did not appear remorseful so much as inconvenienced. It was the first time anyone put that observation in writing about her. It would not be the last. She made it through high school without another formal disciplinary incident. She graduated from a public high school in southwest Oklahoma City in 2002 with a B- average and no clear plan for what came next. There was talk of community college. There was a brochure for a medical billing certificate program. Neither happened. By the summer after graduation, she was working her first paying job, a Sonic drive-in on Southwestern Avenue, car hopping in red roller skates and a red visor for $7.10 an hour. She was 18 years old and already learning the rhythm of service work. Smile, take the order, deliver the food, accept the tip. Do not let the manager catch you sitting down. The next decade was a string of jobs that all looked similar from the outside. Waffle House, Denny's, a Mexican restaurant on Northwest 23rd, a short stint at a Hooters that ended after a dispute over a missing bank deposit that was never formally pursued but never quite explained either. She was a good server when she wanted to be. Customers liked her. She remembered drink orders. She made eye contact. She had what the industry calls tables, meaning the regulars who would sit in her section on purpose and ask for her by name. Managers wrote evaluations that used phrases like personable with guests and moves well under pressure, and more than once needs improvement on cash handling procedures. That last phrase appeared in 3 separate performance reviews across 3 separate restaurants between 2006 and 2012. Each time it appeared, it was attached to the same kind of incident: a drawer short at the end of a shift, a credit card slip that did not match the printed receipt, a comped meal that no manager remembered authorizing. None of the discrepancies were large enough on their own to trigger a formal investigation. $40 here, $60 there, the kind of money a restaurant writes off as the cost of doing business. But the pattern was there if anyone had bothered to look across employers, which of course no one ever did. In 2014, she got married. She and her husband met at a bar near Bricktown where she was waiting tables on weekends. He worked construction. They had a small wedding at a venue in southwest Oklahoma City, folding chairs, a sheet cake from Walmart, her sister as the maid of honor in a teal dress that did not quite fit. The marriage lasted 19 months. By the end of 2015, they were separated, and by the spring of 2016, the divorce was final. There was no property to divide. There were debts on both sides. Rachael kept her maiden name on most of her paperwork and her married name on the lease of an apartment she could no longer afford alone. That was when the white-collar charges started. To understand what happened on the night of June 28, 2018, you have to understand how a restaurant credit card transaction is supposed to work. And you have to understand how Twin Peaks specifically, a national chain with locations in roughly 30 states, sets up its point-of-sale system to prevent exactly the kind of theft Rachael Tyler had decided to commit. When a customer at a Twin Peaks finishes their meal and asks for the check, the server brings the bill in a small black folder. The customer reviews it, places a credit card inside, and hands the folder back. The server is supposed to walk that folder directly to one of 3 POS stations in the building. There is one behind the main bar, one at the server station near the kitchen pass, and one near the host stand at the front. At the POS station, the server inserts or swipes the card on a terminal that is hardwired to the restaurant's processing system. The transaction posts. A printed receipt drops into the printer. The server folds the receipt into the same black folder, returns it to the table, and the customer signs and adds a tip. The server then collects the signed slip and rings out the final amount. The card itself is in the server's possession for a window of roughly 30 to 90 seconds. That window is the vulnerability. Every restaurant in America has it. Every restaurant in America trusts its servers to walk that card straight to the terminal and back. There is no protocol that requires a manager to watch the swipe. There is no cross-checking of the card number against the bill until the closeout audit at the end of the night. And that audit only catches discrepancies if the server is foolish enough to alter the amount. Twin Peaks does have surveillance. A typical location runs between 12 and 16 cameras at every entrance, over every POS terminal, along the bar, in the kitchen pass-through, in the back hallway leading to the office, in the parking lot. The cameras at the POS stations are not there to watch servers. They are there to watch the cash drawers. They record every transaction in case a customer disputes a charge or a manager needs to investigate a short drawer at closeout. The footage is retained for 30 days on a local server in the back office. What the cameras do not do, and what they were not designed to do, is catch a server who swipes a card a second time on a device hidden in her own pocket. There is no policy for that. There is no training module for that. The assumption, the entire architecture of restaurant credit card handling, is built on the premise that the server, having been hired, having been background checked at whatever cursory level the chain bothers with, can be trusted with the 30 to 90 seconds the card is in her hand. Rachael Tyler had worked at the Twin Peaks on Southwest 3rd Street before. She knew exactly where every camera was pointed. She knew exactly which angles the lenses could not see. She had walked the floor of that restaurant for an entire previous tenure, and she had spent that tenure mapping the blind spots without anyone knowing she was doing it. When she walked back through the employee entrance on the afternoon of June 28, 2018, for her first shift back, she was not arriving at a new job. She was returning to a building she had already cased. The device in her pocket was small, about the size of a stick of gum, maybe slightly thicker. A black plastic shell with a magnetic stripe reader on one edge and a short USB cable coiled inside. Devices like it sold on certain corners of the internet for under $200. The pitch on the listings was always the same: for research purposes, for testing your own card, for educational use only. What the devices actually did was simple. You swiped a credit card through the reader. The reader captured the data encoded on the magnetic stripe, the card number, the cardholder's name, the expiration date, the 3-digit service code. The device stored that information internally. Later, at home or at any computer, you plugged the USB into a laptop, and the device dumped its contents into a text file. From there, the data could be sold on the dark web, used to clone physical cards, or used directly online for card-not-present transactions. A single skimming device, properly used in a busy restaurant, could capture between 20 and 50 cards in a single shift. At a Twin Peaks on a Friday night, a server with a 5-table section could see 80 to 100 guests over the course of an evening. The math, if you were the kind of person who did the math, was straightforward. A motivated server with a working skimmer and a clean POS handling routine could harvest enough card data in 3 or 4 shifts to sell for thousands of dollars on the secondary market. Investigators would later trace the device on Rachael Tyler to a vendor that operated out of a server in Eastern Europe. The purchase had been made through a cryptocurrency exchange in February of 2018, 4 months before her first shift back at Twin Peaks. She had ordered it to a mail drop, not to her apartment. The receipt was still in her email when police searched her phone. That she had ordered the device in February raised an obvious question. Twin Peaks did not rehire her until June. So, what had she been doing with a credit card skimmer for 4 months before her first shift back? The investigation that followed her arrest would eventually answer that question, at least partially. Records subpoenaed from her previous employers, a steakhouse in Moore, a sports bar in Norman, a hotel restaurant near Will Rogers Airport, showed that Rachael had worked brief tenures at all 3 between February and May of 2018. None of the tenures lasted more than 3 weeks. In each case, she had been let go for reasons that did not, at the time, seem related. A scheduling dispute, a walkout during a busy Saturday, a no-call, no-show on a Sunday brunch shift. But when investigators cross-referenced her schedules with customer fraud complaints filed against those 3 businesses in the same window, the pattern emerged. 11 customers at the steakhouse in Moore, 9 at the sports bar in Norman, 6 at the airport hotel restaurant, all of them reporting fraudulent charges on cards they had used at the restaurant on a shift Rachael was working. Total preliminary loss estimate from the 3 short tenures, $19,400. But that was the side work, the smaller jobs, the training run. What Rachael wanted, what she had been planning for since at least February, since she ordered the device, was a return to the Twin Peaks on Southwest 3rd Street. Why? Because she knew it. Because she had been there before. Because the cameras at the Twin Peaks on Southwest 3rd Street had a documented dead zone. A section of the bar nearest the service well where the lens swept past at a fixed interval, leaving a roughly 4-second window in which a server standing in a particular spot could swipe a card a second time, drop the card back into the black folder, and never appear on tape. She had figured that out during her previous tenure. She had figured it out by standing in that spot for hundreds of shifts and watching the camera mounted near the back hallway sweep past her again and again in the same rhythm every 22 seconds. By the time she walked back into the building in June of 2018, she did not need to learn anything. She just needed to get hired. Twin Peaks rehired her in early June. The general manager who processed her paperwork had not been at the location during her previous tenure. He was new. He saw a returning employee with prior experience on the floor and counted himself lucky to fill a slot in the schedule before the 4th of July weekend. He did not run a fresh background check. The corporate policy did not require him to. She had been employed there before. Her file was technically still active. He pulled up her old W-4, updated her direct deposit, scheduled her for orientation, and put her on the line for the Thursday night shift. The one variable she had not accounted for was that the cameras in the bar area had been replaced and repositioned during a renovation in early 2018, 8 months after she had quit. The new camera was mounted 6 feet to the left of the old one. The dead zone she had mapped during her previous tenure no longer existed. The dead zone she would step into on her first night back was no longer dead at all. She just did not know it yet. The general manager on duty the night of June 28, 2018, was a 41-year-old named in the police report only as Manager A. He had been with the chain for 9 years and had transferred to the Southwest 3rd Street location from a Twin Peaks in Dallas 6 months earlier. He was the kind of manager who watched the floor more than he watched the office. He walked sections. He talked to tables. He knew the names of his regular customers. What he did on the night of June 28th was something he did roughly once a week. After the dinner rush settled, around 9:30 p.m., when the floor went from packed to manageable, he went into the back office, sat down at the security workstation, and pulled up the live feed from the bar area cameras. He liked to review the previous 2 hours of footage on fast forward, not because he was suspicious of anyone, because he wanted to see what the bartenders were doing during the rush, whether the floor was running cleanly, whether the food was hitting tables at the right pace. At approximately 9:52 p.m., he scrolled back to the 7:30 p.m. mark to check on a complaint a regular had made about a slow check at table 14. The footage played at 4 times speed. He watched the server who had handled that table, Rachael Tyler, move through her section, drop checks, pick up folders, and walk them to the bar area POS. He almost did not catch it. The first time, on fast forward, he saw her stop at the service well, set down the black folder, and then make a small motion with her right hand near her right hip pocket. The gesture was quick. On fast forward, it looked like she was adjusting her uniform. He let the footage continue. A minute later, still in the fast-forward review, he saw her do it again. Same spot, same gesture, same small motion near the same pocket. This time, he stopped the playback. He rewound. He played it back at normal speed. What he saw at normal speed was a server pull a credit card out of a black folder, swipe it through the POS terminal as expected, and then, instead of placing the card back in the folder, palm the card down to her right hip, where her right hand made a deliberate, practiced motion that any human being in the year 2018 would recognize as a card swipe. The card then went back into the folder went back to the table. The transaction looked, from any angle the cameras had been designed to monitor, completely normal. He rewound again. He watched it 3 more times. Then he opened a different camera angle, the one mounted near the back hallway. The one Rachael did not know had been replaced and repositioned 8 months after she had quit. In the new camera angle, what he had seen on the first feed became unambiguous. There was a black object in her right hand. There was a magnetic stripe. There was a card moving through it. He picked up the phone in the office and called the Oklahoma City Police Department. Stories like this one do not get told often enough. If you want to see more accountability coverage and more of the cases the local news misses, subscribe and turn on notifications. We post a new investigation every week, and if you have ever waited tables for a living, drop a comment and tell me how often you watched your card walk away from your table. 2 officers from the Oklahoma City Police Department arrived at the Twin Peaks on Southwest 3rd Street at 10:06 p.m. They parked in the rear lot and entered through the kitchen door so as not to alarm guests still seated in the dining room. The manager met them at the back hallway, walked them into the office, and replayed the footage on the security workstation. Both officers watched it twice. Both officers came to the same conclusion the manager had. Before they approached Rachael, one of the officers ran her name through the department's record system on his mobile terminal. The results came back within 90 seconds. Outstanding warrants in Tulsa County for 2 felony counts of obtaining money by false pretenses, 1 felony count of second-degree burglary, and 1 misdemeanor count of possession of a controlled substance. The Tulsa charges had been filed in March of 2018, and the warrants had been active since April. There were also 3 outstanding Oklahoma City municipal warrants for failure to appear on traffic citations dating back to 2017. She had been working at Twin Peaks for less than 4 hours. She was already wanted in 2 counties. The officers waited in the office while the manager went out onto the floor and asked Rachael to come to the back, explaining only that there was a question about a customer complaint. She walked in carrying a half-empty tray of empty glasses. She set the tray down on the small table inside the office and turned to face the manager. That was when she saw the 2 officers standing in the corner. The officer who would later write the incident report described the moment in 3 sentences. Her shoulders dropped. Her eyes went to the door. She took 1 step backward and stopped. The search of her person, conducted after she was placed under arrest and read her rights, recovered a black plastic device, roughly 3 inches long, with a magnetic stripe reader on one edge and a USB connector on the other end. It was in the right front pocket of her uniform shorts. She had been swiping cards through it while pretending to adjust her uniform. The device's internal memory was full. Subsequent forensic analysis by the OCPD Financial Crimes Unit would extract 23 complete card records from the device. 23 different customers, all of whom had eaten at the Twin Peaks on Southwest 3rd Street that evening between 5 p.m. and 9:50 p.m. A separate search of her personal vehicle, parked in the employee lot, recovered a laptop computer in a backpack in the back seat. The laptop, when later examined under a search warrant, contained 4 separate text files dated between February and May of 2018. The files contained card data for 147 additional accounts. The metadata on the files matched the dates of her short tenures at the steakhouse in Moore, the sports bar in Norman, and the airport hotel restaurant. The total preliminary haul, before adding the 23 cards from her first night back at Twin Peaks, was 170 cards across 4 restaurants in 5 months. The encounter inside the back office of the Twin Peaks lasted approximately 7 minutes. The body cam footage from the senior officer captured the entirety of it. "Ma'am, can you step over here, please? Hands where I can see them. What is this about? What is going on? We need you to empty your pockets onto the table, right now. I don't have anything in my pockets." "Ma'am, we have you on video. We need you to empty your pockets onto the table. You have me on video doing what? I have been here for 4 hours. I haven't done anything. Ma'am, I'm not going to ask you again. Empty your pockets." The footage shows Rachael standing very still for roughly 6 seconds. Her right hand goes to her hip and stops there. She looks at the manager, who has stepped back against the wall. She looks at the second officer, who has moved to cover the door. Then she reaches into her right front pocket and pulls out the black plastic device. She sets it on the table next to her tray of empty glasses. "What is that?" "It's a phone charger. It's a phone charger." "Yes. Ma'am, that is not a phone charger. Place your hands behind your back. You are being placed under arrest." She did not resist. She did not say anything else while the cuffs went on. As the officers walked her out the back door of the restaurant, past the dumpster, past the line cooks who had stepped outside for a smoke break and were now watching in silence, she made one final statement to no one in particular. "I should have stayed in Tulsa." It was the only honest thing she said that night. Rachael Elizabeth Tyler was booked into the Oklahoma County Jail at 12:18 a.m. on the morning of June 29, 2018. The initial charge filed by the Oklahoma City Police Department was 1 felony count of unlawful use of a computer under Oklahoma Statute Title 21, Section 1953, a charge that covers the use of any device to capture or transfer financial data without authorization. The Tulsa County warrants were served while she was still in booking. By the time the morning shift came on at 6 a.m., she had been formally charged in 2 separate jurisdictions with 5 total felonies and 4 misdemeanors. The investigation expanded over the following 4 months. Oklahoma City detectives partnered with the United States Secret Service Field Office in Oklahoma City, which handles federal financial crimes, and with investigators from the Tulsa County District Attorney's Office. The 4 text files recovered from her laptop were forwarded to the Secret Service for analysis. The card data was cross-referenced against fraud complaints in databases maintained by Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. The cross-reference turned up an additional 31 fraud complaints that had not previously been linked to any restaurant employee, all of them originating from accounts that had been used at one of the 4 restaurants where Rachael had worked between February and June of 2018. The Twin Peaks corporate office, alerted to the investigation, conducted its own internal audit of her previous tenure at the Southwest 3rd Street location. That tenure had run from August of 2016 through April of 2017. 8 months. During that window, the chain's loss prevention team identified 74 customer-initiated chargebacks tied to transactions on her shifts. Most of those chargebacks had been processed as ordinary fraud claims at the time, written off as the cost of doing business, never linked to any specific employee. With the benefit of hindsight, the pattern was unmistakable. The internal audit concluded that her first tenure at Twin Peaks had likely involved the same skimming activity, possibly with a different device, possibly with the same one, but with the same method and the same dead zone in the same camera coverage. Final tally across all confirmed and suspected incidents: 245 compromised cards, an estimated $51,000 in fraudulent charges across 2 years, 4 restaurants, and 1 returning employee who had spent her first tenure mapping the cameras she would later exploit on her second. In November of 2018, Rachael entered a negotiated plea before a district judge in Oklahoma County. She pleaded guilty to the single felony count of unlawful use of a computer in Oklahoma County and to 2 of the 4 felony counts pending in Tulsa County. The remaining charges were dismissed as part of the plea. She received a sentence of 7 years in the custody of the Oklahoma Department of Corrections, with the first 3 years to be served, and the remaining 4 suspended pending compliance with probation conditions. She was ordered to pay restitution of $41,200 to the 4 affected restaurants and their card processors, jointly and severally, with any unidentified accomplices. The judge, in delivering the sentence, addressed her directly from the bench. He said that what made her case different was not the dollar amount, which was, in his words, modest compared to many financial crimes this court sees. What made it different was the deliberateness. The 4-month period between ordering the device and her first shift back at Twin Peaks, the mail drop, the mapped camera angles, the cycling through 3 other restaurants to refine the technique before returning to the building she already knew. He said, "You did not stumble into this. You walked into this with a plan you spent half a year building. You returned to the very people who had given you a job once before, and you used the trust they extended to you a second time as the cover for what you already intended to do. That is not a crime of opportunity. That is a crime of preparation." Rachael was transferred from Oklahoma County Jail to the Mabel Bassett Correctional Center in McLeod, Oklahoma, in late November of 2018. She served 2 years and 7 months of her 3-year custody term before being released on parole in the summer of 2021. As a condition of her parole, she is permanently barred from any employment that involves the handling of customer payment information, restaurants, retail, hotels, anywhere a card might cross her hands. She returned to Oklahoma City after her release. She lives in a small apartment on the south side of town. She works, according to her last reported parole filing, in an administrative position at a warehouse that handles industrial cleaning supplies. She does not interact with customers. She does not touch cards. The terms of her parole run through 2025. The Twin Peaks on Southwest 3rd Street replaced the cameras in the bar area in early 2019. The dead zone she had mapped no longer exists. The chain rolled out a new corporate policy that requires servers to swipe cards in full view of a fixed overhead camera and to display empty hands before and after each transaction. The policy is named, internally, after the city where the incident that prompted it occurred. The servers at the Southwest 3rd Street Twin Peaks call it the OKC Protocol. Most of them have never been told why. That case was something else. But the case on the right-hand side of your screen is even harder to believe. Click it now.